Hey class, it's time for a little bit of grammar. Make sure you have a handout and a pen or pencil in hand. We'll have some guided notes, so fill in those blanks as we go. Pause if you need to. Rewind if you got to. My favorite place to start when we're talking about sentences and fragments is our Schoolhouse Rock with good old Mr. Morton.
This is the tale of Mr. Morton. Mr. Morton is who? He is the subject of our tale, and the predicate tells what Mr. Morton must do. Mr. Morton walked down the street. Mr. Morton walked. Mr. Morton talked to his cat. Mr. Morton talked. Hello, cat. You look good. Mr. Morton was lonely. Mr. Morton was. Mr. Morton is the subject of the sentence, and what the predicate says he does. Mr. Morton knew just one girl. Mr. Morton knew. Mr. Morton grew flowers for Pearl. Mr. Morton grew. Mr. Morton was very shy. Mr. Morton was. Mr. Morton is the subject of the sentence, and what the predicate says he does. The subject is a noun. That's a person, place, or thing. It's who or what the sentence is about. And the predicate is the verb. That's the action word that gets this subject up and out.
Spoiler alert, he ends up with the girl and they move in together and live happily ever after. But the important thing is that we have a subject, and that's Mr. Morton. Mr. Morton does whatever the predicate of the sentence tells him to do. That's our verb, our action word that's going on. So it makes sense that an English sentence is a complete thought that has two parts. It has a subject and it has a predicate. And that subject is the person, place, or thing. It's a noun. This is the thing that the sentence is about. Person, place, or thing. L-A-C-E. I'm left-handed. I have to do this with my right hand because it's with a mouse. Person, place, or thing. So it's who or what the sentence is talking about. But then, of course, we have the predicate. That's the action. I don't want that, sorry. It's an action word. It's a noun. We need these two things to make a complete thought. So the subject of a sentence is what the sentence is about. It answers the questions that say something like who or what. So to identify the subject of these sentences, I'm going to think, let's see, the students are studying grammar. I'm going to say who or what is doing something in this sentence, and here's our subject, the students. The students are the one who are doing something. The car stalls at every intersection. Who or what is doing something? The what in this case is a car. There's our subject. So I'm putting S's there for the subject of our sentences. Not only do we need a subject, but we need a predicate. It says something about the subject, and it contains a word that expresses some kind of action or a state of being. Now, these states of being are things like is or was. These are states of being. These ises and wases are showing that a person exists or is there in place. Right? So they don't necessarily have action, but they are a state of being. Contains some kind of a verb. So the rest of our sentence, our predicates over here, would be these action words: walked, talked, knew, and grew. Each of these are action words, things that we can, in one way or another, show how they happened. So action words like walked and talked, knew, and grew. So when I say now that the students are studying grammar, I'm going to think, well, who is doing what? What are the students doing? They are studying. There's our predicate. And it's okay if you include this whole thing right here, are studying grammar, because it's explaining what they're studying. The car stalls at every intersection. The simple predicate that we have here is that it stalls. That's what it does. I'm totally okay if you identify this whole thing as the predicate. It's the second half of the sentence. So in these directions, to identify the subject and predicate in the following sentences, draw a line between the subject and predicate, label S for subject, pred for predicate, or just P. When I say that, we're going to do the first one together, and then I'll ask you to hit pause and then check your work. Number 1, Bill hung the picture on the wall. Bill is our subject. When I think about what he did, he hung a picture on the wall. So when I talk about a line separating the two, we look like that. Bill is our subject. Hung the picture is the predicate. Go ahead and hit pause on this video and do the rest of these 5. Don't start it again until you're ready to check. Alrighty, here are the answers to check really quickly. The student in the red shirt is sleeping. So the student is the predicate. This tells us more about that student, so I'm going to keep it with the subject. So I didn't draw that line until right here. And that person is sleeping, that's what they're doing. I, subject, will be driving soon, predicate. The class, subject, what did the class do? The class started. The fall colors in Michigan are beautiful. Again, the fall colors is our simple subject. They don't do anything until here, and so we need to think about this thing in the middle. If you put this green line maybe here and said the fall colors in Michigan are beautiful, well, the idea is we have this middle thing. The predicate doesn't happen until R. It's a state of being. And so when I think about in Michigan, it's not talking about beautiful being in Michigan. It's talking about the fall colors in Michigan. So I'm going to put them right there like that. On the back side, when we think about fragments, it's kind of the opposite side of a full sentence. Fragments are incomplete sentences. They lack a subject and or a predicate. They're missing one part or the other or both. They express an incomplete thought. So, gave away his iPod. Well, it's starting with a verb. I don't know who or what gave away their iPod, so this one is missing a subject. The main character in The Catcher in the Rye, well, this is missing, I have a subject. I could tell you that's Holden Caulfield, but it's missing some kind of a verb, some kind of a predicate going on here. There's something missing. One of the most common types of fragments occurs when students use what's called a subordinate clause. Subordinate, we've talked about submarines being below or under. So this isn't below a complete sentence. A subordinate clause is below a complete sentence. It's not a complete sentence. It's a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate, but it can't stand alone. What? This one. Sorry. Can't stand alone. Subordinating clauses often begin with a subordinate conjunction, something that tries to join it to something else. Words like because or since. If we didn't have that word there, it would be a completely good sentence. But because we have the word there, it makes it an incomplete sentence, right? If I just had her performance was flawless, that would be a complete thought. It would make perfect sense. But as soon as I put the word because in front, there's that conjunction, that subordinating conjunction. That means it doesn't make a complete thought. If I ran up to you in the hallway and said, when the students returned home, you'd say, what happened when they returned home? It's not a full sentence, right? So to test for fragments, ask yourself 3 questions. Is there a verb? If not, attach one or pair it up with another sentence. Is there a subject? If not, provide one or connect it to another sentence. Is there a subordinating clause? If there is, if we simply remove it. That's one way to make it a complete sentence. Or if I attach it to another complete sentence, it would work together. So, we're going to try to fix, we have 6 clauses. We're going to see if it's a fragment, or an S if it's a complete sentence. If it's a fragment, we're going to see what's missing to make it complete. The guy who works at Meijer. Well, I know who, but I don't know what he did. So this thing is starting out as a fragment. I have a subject. So when I want to explain what's missing and what needs to happen to make it a complete sentence, this thing needs a predicate. It needs a verb. So maybe I want to say the guy who works at Meijer gave me a free ice cream cone. Or the guy who works at Meijer is nice. But I need some kind of a predicate to it. Because she felt ill. Well, that's a fragment. Not a complete thought going on there. I could just cross this part out. She felt ill. Or I could say that we could add another part of it here, something afterwards. Because she felt ill, she went home from school. Since summer ended, we have covered a lot of material. This is so true for us. This sounds like a complete sentence. We have a subject going on here, and we have a verb, have covered. So we have a predicate. This is a complete sentence as is. See how we can pair this thing up here? Since summer ended. If we just had this part, it would be a fragment, but since we have it paired up with a complete thought, we're good to go. Sadly walked down the hall. Well, sadly, this is a fragment sentence. I need to know who. We would need to add a subject for this one. I need to know who sadly walked down the hall. Even if I just had a name in front, it would be enough to complete this sentence. After we practiced our presentations, fragment. Can you picture how we might solve this? Lots of different ways. After we practiced our presentations, comma, we slept. Or, another way, is to just cross this part out. We practiced our presentations. Your choice which way you want to answer or correct these things, but they do need some kind of correcting. And last but not least, one that starts with a subordinating conjunction. That's a fragment. The one that starts with a subordinating conjunction is tricky. Somehow we need to add a predicate. Stapled to this, you have fragments exercise number 1. For each one, read each sentence carefully. Read it as if it were its own, and then simply circle A, B, or C about which one of these things is a fragment. Let me switch quickly. Oh, I can't do that. So the first one says, Maria wasn't watching her plate of barbecue very carefully. That's a complete thought. So Santana, the family beagle, snatched a chicken leg hanging over the edge. That's a complete thought. We have Santana, and he snatched a chicken leg. We have a subject and a verb. Sentence C, though. As baked beans and potato salad slid onto Maria's new sandals. That as in front is one of those tricky subordinate clauses, one of those subordinate conjunctions. C is a fragment. If I came up to you and said, as baked beans and potato salad slid onto her new sandals, you'd say, what happened as she did that? Please continue working on the next 18. We'll see you soon. Enjoy.